So when we look at comparative advantage, we said comparative advantage is the main basis for trade. It's not about absolute advantage. It's about like comparative advantage. And within comparative advantage, we said is that if you have uh, a lower opportunity cost, then you have a comparative advantage. So how do you get a lower opportunity cost or comparative advantage? And we say this that the first reason is basically when countries have different factor endowment. For example, Saudi Arabia has oil, right? That's they're endowed with, they're blessed with oil, for example. China may have labor. Germany might have, or Japanese might have, like high quality capital, which might not be basically given to them uh, through nature, but it's actually given to them through what we call acquired kind of an advantage. So the idea goes is that difference in quantity and quality of factors of production can result in us to have a lower opportunity cost. For example, some countries might have a stock of human capital as the people, or some countries may have a different higher productivity, like, or may have different sort of resources. So first reason why countries may have comparative advantage could be because of the factor endowment, the resources they have. Another important factor that results in comparative advantage is called differences in technology. For example, Germany has one of the best technology of manufactured goods, or Japanese technology is also regarded as superior. Uh, and that's basically also becomes a reason for what you call comparative advantage. And by the way, better technology is basically more uh, better quality of physical capital available, but also, when you are working on a machinery, the labor productivity also goes up. So if I'm working on a laptop that isn't really working well, my productivity will go down. But when I'm working on a laptop or machinery that is very fast, or that has a better performance, my own performance will go up. Make sense? So differences in technology becomes the second factor of why you may see you may see comparative advantage happen. Then comes, guys, an important idea of exchange rate. How can exchange rate gives you a comparative advantage? I want to sort of explain this uh, with a couple of things here. Remember, we said this: if your exchange rate goes down, yeah, so exports become, price of exports will go. If your exchange rate, for example, was $1 is equal to rupees 165, and now it becomes $1 is equal to rupees 200. So rupee is becoming weaker and dollar is becoming stronger. So if the exchange rate for rupee goes down, what happens to our exports? Exports become cheaper because for every dollar, previously people used to get 165 rupee worth of good, but now for every dollar they get 200 rupee worth of good. They get more. Make sense? So for every dollar, price of exports will basically go price of exports will go down and price of imports will go up, and that price of exports going down would mean you will get a comparative advantage. One would argue this that this isn't really a real comparative advantage. It could be an artificial comparative advantage. Does that make sense? Because it isn't really that you are making cheaper goods. It's basically you making cheaper goods because the exchange rate that you're selling it at is basically making it relatively cheaper than others. Make sense, guys? Are we good with the exchange rate idea? Yeah. Any questions, guys? People online? Similarly, guys, another important factor that can make your country to achieve a comparative advantage is relative rates of inflation. Remember, when the price level goes up, we said this that the exports will become, in fact, price level, let's make price level go down. When the price level goes down, exports will become cheaper and imports will become relatively expensive. Why? Because domestic goods will be cheaper. Remember, if the inflation in your country is lower, what will that do as a result of? Again, your exports are cheaper, so you will gain a comparative advantage or lower opportunity cost. So what I'm trying to point out here is this: the competitive advantage could also be achieved through things like inflation and exchange rate, uh, although they may not be long lasting kind of a thing. But a good example of a country that achieves competitive advantage through inflation and exchange rate is also China. And I'll tell you why: because China tries to have a not a floating exchange rate, but it's got a managed exchange rate, which means it tries to control the exchange rate, keep it as low as possible. Number one. Number two, they also try to keep inflation under tight control. They will basically, because they are one of the largest buyers of oil, they are the largest buyers of a lot of resources. They try to make sure that they achieve a lot of better deals and lower prices and so on. A lot of people also blame China for giving subsidies. When China was growing fast, a lot of people used to say that these Chinese companies are getting state subsidies. But honestly speaking, that isn't really true, because if that was the case, they must have supported some industry, but not all some industries, because it's not really sustainable to support state industries for long. Although the argument is made that, like when you are giving these subsidies, you are kind of like controlling market, and as soon as you control the complete market, you start to take that subsidy away. Zamil saying the Pakistan exchange rate is currently low, right? Not really. It's 165. It was one few years back. It was used to be around 115 to 20, and then it jumped up by another 40 rupees to 165 or 160 roughly. In fact, now it's 160, 158. Yes, the argument that the government raised was this, that they were managing exchange rates artificially, and it wasn't at the right level. You're right. Got it, guys. Now, another one we were just talking about is export subsidies. I was just talking about this, that if your producers get export subsidies, what will happen as a result? Clearly, if the subsidies will make price of exports to go down and us to achieve competitive advantage. Again, one would argue this, that this is not a it's an artificial competitive advantage, not a sort of actual competitive advantage, but nonetheless, competitive advantage happens through this also. Then comes the non-price factors, guys. What are the non-price factors? Non-price factors are things that are basically not related to prices, and yet they give you competitive advantage. A good example of this is German German cars. German cars are high quality and have a very inelastic demand. Are they cheap? And the answer is no, they're actually expensive. But they have, a lot of people say, very high value. High value means basically the quality is so good that even though the price is expensive, but the German car will last you much longer. So this is what we call reliability or product design or quality of after sales service. If these non-price factors are really good, then it actually will give you competitive advantage, because people will still buy a good even though it's expensive. Because you're not competing on prices, you're competing on a long-term reliability of the product. Make sense, guys? A high exchange rate, yes, Zamin, will be, from the context that we're just talking about, the high exchange rate will be a disadvantage, because you may lose your competitive advantage. But high exchange rate may not necessarily be bad. We'll talk about that also. Okay, now let's talk about what are the assumptions that have gone into competitive advantage. And I want to show you some questions related to this, because it's a very popular exam question about competitive advantage. So, guys, the first assumption that we took is that PPC have our constant cost of production. Remember, the PPCs that we draw in this were all linear, right? They were all linear in nature, and they were not non-linear. Linear basically means constant opportunity cost. Is constant opportunity cost realistic? Is it realistic? What should it be? What should PPC be? Downward, so this is also downward sloping. We call that, what do you call that shape? Concave to the origin. So this is not realistic, and it should be concave to the origin, right? So one of the criticism that we may have, or one of the limitation we may have, is that constant cost of production reflected in the linear PPC should not be there. Because constant means that there is perfect factor mobility of production. Remember? Also, there is also, um, in reality, perfect mobility of capital is not possible, and that's why we need a concave to the origin PPC. Third, guys, an important thing is that we assume no transportation costs. Like the whole working that we did, we found opportunity costs. We did not include transportation costs. Is that a right assumption in the international trade context? We should include transportation costs. A lot of time, by the way, transportation costs could be so high that the comparative advantage can disappear actually. Are you all with me? If comparative advantage disappears because of transportation costs, then you will not trade to begin with. Despite having a comparative advantage, if the trade cost is too much, there is no point of doing that. But in our model, we assume no transportation cost, which makes it weaker as well. Lastly, guys, we assume that there is free trade and no trade barrier. Is that a good assumption? Do you think there is free trade in the world? There are actually trade barriers. A lot of countries do not allow free trade to happen, and because of that, again, this model is weak, and that's why I want to discuss the limitation. So the above assumptions do not accurately reflect real world conditions. These assumptions are the basis for the criticism of the comparative advantage model. The criticisms are: number one, cost of production need not to be constant. Labor and other factors of production suffer from both occupational and geographical mobility. Hence, PPC cannot be linear. In fact, PPC PPC are concave to the origin. So our assumption of a linear PPC makes our model weak. Yeah. Secondly, transportation costs can exist in the real world and can sometimes eliminate any competitive advantage. So assuming no transportation costs is also weak assumption, because transportation costs is a significant cost. If I'm sending stuff from one part of the world to another part of the world, the transportation cost may take away the competitive advantage. Make sense? Thirdly, guys, trade barriers also exist in reality, which prevents trade flows from um, reflecting competitive advantage among nations. So, if what are trade barriers? Trade barriers could be quotas. We have a whole discussion about that. It could be tariffs, which are taxes that you put. It could be, like sometimes you put a ban on something, you put an embargo. So all of those things can be causes of trade to not happen. Does that make sense, guys? So we again do not. Our weakness of the model is this, that we do not include uh, trade barriers, which are reality. Makes sense. Now I want to show you some questions about how does it get tested in exams. Also, some of the MCQs which will test our knowledge about transportation costs and so on. And then we'll be done with competitive advantage discussion. And then from tomorrow, we'll look at trade protection, like trade barriers and all that. Okay. So let's talk about, let me close this. Guys, what's the answer for this one? Country X has a competitive advantage in producing wheat and country Y in producing cars. However, the countries choose not to specialize and trade. What is a valid reason for this behavior? A. Shouldn't be A. If the cost of transport is really high relative to opportunity costs, this means that the transportation cost is eliminating the opportunity cost. Isn't that true? There is immobility of factors of production between the countries. No, uh, we don't really care about that. But immobility of factors of production within the country between two goods. Yeah, we like immobility of factors of production between countries because that makes trade happen. If there's full mobility of factors of production, then trade may not happen because you'll take things from different countries and produce it. But if the cost of transportation is really high, then the trade may not take place. Isn't that true? That's what we discussed, right? Transportation cost. Look at this one, number five. Explain how competitive advantage shows specialization and international trade can improve uh, the welfare of consumers in an economy. In this kind of a question, when they are asking us how competitive advantage shows specialization and international trade, we may need to go and give an example, right? The one that we just gave. Remember digital camera and vacuum cleaner? We need to show how the countries specialize in the goods, they have a competitive advantage. Then we need to talk about the trading line, which is based on the exchange rate. And then we need to talk about how both countries end up producing beyond their PPC. Remember, we got a combination of 2020. Previously, 2010 was the maximum both countries would get. Now, then after trade, they used to get 2020, which means that the both countries will benefit. So, explain what competitive advantage is, which is lower opportunity cost. Talk about how countries may get it very briefly. Then talk about what do countries do when they have competitive advantage. Show through example how countries may end up producing beyond their PPC. Make sense? Any questions about number five? Yeah, Zamin, A was right. Makes sense, guys. Is there any question about number 5A? Easy. So it's a fairly straightforward. I want to show you one more question, which is not here, but there is a question that come up that talks about the weaknesses of comparative advantage theory. Let me try to find that out. Yeah. Explain the limitations of the theory of comparative advantage in accounting for a country's pattern of trade. You can see this. This is an 8 mark question. Basically, this is asking us about, like what are the weaknesses of comparative advantage theory in accounting for countries' pattern of trade. Make sense? So this is where you talk about what is comparative advantage, what are the weaknesses, what are the weaknesses that we talked about, guys? It doesn't include transportation costs, no transportation costs. What else? Constant opportunity cost. Very good. Constant opportunity cost. No trade barriers, which is also not realistic. Yeah. And in conclusion, you would want to mention this, that the conclusion would be, despite these weaknesses, comparative advantage theory still is the best explanation why countries specialize in trade. You know what I mean? So despite these weaknesses, the comparative advantage theory is still the best explanation we have uh, for understanding how why countries specialize in trade. So is economic efficiency profit maximization? No, it's not in our syllabus. It's in A2 syllabus. Economic efficiency profit maximization. Make sense? Are we good? Any question, guys? Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much, guys. Tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll discuss um, trade barriers.